All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm Jessica, and I'm so glad that you're here. I'm super excited to get started in a moment. And thank you for registering and being here live for this first of these 3 sessions. A few housekeeping things before we get started. As participants continue to flow in here, this is super exciting. We are recording as of now. I'm just going to double check that all is well with the recording. Yes, it is. Perfect. Okay, lots of things going on here on my Zoom screen. A few housekeeping things beyond a thank you for being here. I can't wait to lead these over the next 3 Thursdays. Same link, same time, same place, same host here. First things first is your chat. Let's set your chat settings to everyone. When you're looking at the blue button within your chat, it either says host and panelists, which means I would only see your comments. With everyone can see what's flowing through here. We can help each other answer questions and navigate comments as we go. And I'll do my best as we go along here to maintain an eye on the chat. That's for sure. That's super exciting. This will be recorded, as will the other 2. The recordings will likely be posted on the Community Natural Foods webpage for this event, likely the day after or as soon as it's ready in Zoom. And we will have a bit of Q&A time at the end. So I encourage you to note your questions somewhere for yourself. And once I'm done delivering the content, you can certainly use the chat as we go along to comment and chat with one another as well and share with me your reactions to what you're learning. But we will have some Q&A in the chat at the end, and I'll do my best to get to as many questions as I can in the time that we have, because it does go so quickly. And lastly, before we get started, I encourage you, highly recommend that you close any other tabs on your computer, put your phone to the side. We do our best learning, our best action taking, our best absorption of this stuff into our brain and our bodies when we're focused on one thing at a time instead of 2, 3, or 5 things at a time. So you're here, you've carved out this time for yourself. I encourage you to be solely focused on this and nothing else as much as possible. And let me know in the chat that you can hear me. And please let me know in the chat that you can see my introductory hello message here so that I know that the chat is working. Before we get started, I'll just wait a moment to make sure you can hear me with no difficulty and that all is well before we get started. Okay. All right, just making sure my settings are all set. Can you hear me okay? Please let me know in the chat. Okay, I can see a few hands up. Okay, I can see the chat is currently disabled. That is why. Okay, let's see what we can do about that. I'm not sure why. Okay, just a moment. I'm going to see if we can figure this out before we get started. Thank you for raising your hands and letting me know. I wouldn't have known otherwise, although the lack of responses, that's unusual. That is really unusual. I've never encountered that before. Let's just see if we can solve that here. Otherwise, I'm just waiting for a response from my CNF contact, and we'll see if we can troubleshoot here so we can get started. Thank you for your patience. Okay, they're looking to see if they can change that. So what I'm going to do is keep an eye on that text message while I get started so that you can receive the content without delay. And I will keep an eye on That will probably be changed from the back end so that it just starts working. But I will keep an eye on it. Let's get started. At least you can hear me and you can see my screen. So let's get started. This is the 3-part gut health series, therapeutic food and beverages for gut repair and healing. Let's dig in. All right, here's our agenda for this evening. We're going to start with why the gut is ground zero for thriving health, food and beverage factors that impact our gut health and digestion, how gut inflammation starts and progresses as it continues as a chronic state of inflammation, my overall approach as a culinary and holistic nutrition practitioner when it comes to gut repair and healing. We're going to then dig into the essentials and the scope of an anti-inflammatory diet in terms of whole foods and beverages. We're going to talk a little bit about food and beverage-based gut health disruptors, and this segues into this next item of navigating food eliminations, because gut health disruptors are the logical place to start in starting to reduce and dial down their presence and their frequency and their volume in our day-to-day diet. And I'll chat a little bit about specialized gut health approaches near the end, prior to our Q&A time. So I was going to ask you in the chat, are you ready? And you can send me an emoji and I will see it as we get going here. Let's do it. A quick disclaimer before we get started. This webinar is for informational, educational purposes only. It's not professional medical advice custom to your body, your unique needs, health and medically, and your physiology. This is, wide-reaching, in reaching a few hundred of you or more tonight. As a certified culinary nutrition expert and certified holistic nutritional consultant, I am not a therapist. I am not a medical professional or doctor. If you're curious about whether something new, food and beverage-wise, should be part of your day-to-day moving forward on any level, it's always best to consult with your primary care practitioner as opposed to using this as your personal protocol. Let's keep going. Okay. What do I do as a culinary and holistic nutrition practitioner? I help and work with high-performing adults navigating both autoimmune and non-autoimmune gut disorders. I help them to repair their gut, regain the energy that has been lost for any amount of time, and release their life-hindering symptoms so they can flourish in both their personal and professional lives every day. My niche over the past 8 years in private practice has largely been autoimmune gut disorders like celiac, Crohn's, colitis, and the imbalances that go along with that. But there are some other examples of non-autoimmune gut disorders listed here, which is scratching the surface. But that is really where my deep dive focus has been with the gut and digestion over the past 8 years. Why do I do this work? I've had a personal journey with autoimmunity of the gut, ulcerative colitis, a form of inflammatory bowel disease, for the last 21 years already, which is hard to believe. From everything I've learned in being a practitioner and otherwise, health does start in the gut. It has a ripple and cascade effect on every other system of the body. And that is why you're here tonight. That's why we're talking about this. It's crucial for thriving gut health, but also overall body health. And your body's very capable of being rebalanced and repaired when we're in the right situations with the right kinds of supports that are aligned and personalized to our unique circumstances. My clients that I've worked with, myself personally, I don't want to feel great just every now and then or occasionally. I want to feel as best as possible every single day or as close to that as possible. And that's why I do the work I do, so that others can experience, dramatic transformations with their health as I have with my journey with ulcerative colitis. And this really starts with getting into the right kind of support with the right kind of practitioner that's right for you, breaking into limiting beliefs with our mindset, closing our gaps with our knowledge and skills, and getting into, most importantly, sustainable action that we can carry forth and not be, all over the continuum with back and forth every day. Just taking a quick look at my CNF text here. Okay, so with the settings, you can submit questions. I will see them at the end when I open up the features of the participants here. So I'm sorry about the chat, but you can submit your questions at the end, and I will get to as many as I can by raising your hand and commenting as you have about the chat. So let's continue to dig in and enjoy and reap the most out of this that we can. How do I practice? I practice through my 5-month online coaching program, the Digestion Method, which is a deep dive into transforming your gut health, because this stuff takes time. It doesn't happen in 1 or 2 sessions or a few weeks' time. Amongst these other kinds of opportunities I've listed here, and And lastly, my background as a culinary and holistic nutrition practitioner has spanned these programs here, as well as additional certifications. It is my second career. I spent many years as an elementary school teacher in my own classroom, and I currently spend a good part of my week as well, alongside coaching and these kinds of presentations in the coming School of Medicine at the University of Calgary, supporting the med school students from a health and wellness standpoint, which is really rewarding work too. All right, let's do it. Why the gut is ground zero. This is the core of your body's physiological functioning. It's that first point of contact with anything coming in from the outside environment, food, beverage, toxins, the air we breathe, that sort of thing. And your gut, and when I'm referring to your gut, as you see in this image, everything from the mouth, where we start chewing, to the anus, and where we expel our waste when we poop. So this whole system throughout our entire body is responsible for four things: the ingestion and taking in of our food and its nutrients that it has to offer, the digestion and metabolic breakdown of that food, the absorption of the nutrients that food and beverage has to offer, which is absorbed through our small intestinal wall into our bloodstream, and our bloodstream carries that to our cells and tissues to nourish and energize us. And then, of course, our elimination of fiber that doesn't get digested, like the outer skins of fruits and veggies, waste matter, the metabolites and breakdown of hormones after the liver and the body have used and done with them what they need to, especially things like excess estrogen. And the last thing, foundationally, we need to realize about the gut or the digestive system is that it is deeply connected with every other physiological system of your body, including your thyroid, which fires your metabolism where it sits in the base of your neck, your adrenal health, your nervous system, blood sugar regulation, liver filtration, all of your hormones and brain-based chemicals called neurotransmitters. A lot of these hormones and neurotransmitters that operate in different parts of the body and different systems of the body are actually manufactured and made and synthesized in the gut, believe it or not. So that's why the gut and the hormones and the gut-brain connection are so interconnected as a result. All right, food and beverage factors impacting gut health. These items here will be no surprise to you, I'm sure. Anything really refined and processed as convenience foods, fast foods, fried foods, highly refined and processed fats and oils that we find in varying amounts and of varying types in these kinds of foods. Really refined processed fats and oils, which I'll identify later on, are stripped of their nutritional integrity when they're highly heated during refining and processing. So they become pro-inflammatory in the body instead of being the anti-inflammatory versions they were before they were highly refined and processed and heated in our factories. Naked carbs, the white stuff, the white bread, the white rice, the white pasta, the white all-purpose flour, again, stripped of its nutrition and really just high starch content with nothing really else to offer. Highly refined processed sugars, artificial sweeteners, a high sugar diet overall, regardless of where that sugar is coming from. Anything artificially engineered or synthesized, like additives, preservatives, dyes, colors, flavors. Post-industrial revolution, we started seeing the hybridization of grains, genetically modified organisms, really heavy use of pesticides and herbicides, including glyphosate. All of these things are things your gut and your liver and your entire body have to process. So the more work it has to do, the more chance of inflammation and feeding of poor bacteria instead of supporting of good bacteria in the intestinal tract. Alcohol as a toxin to the body, no surprise there. Particular diets and approaches long-term. And by diet, I mean just an approach to nutrition. Really high protein, low fiber diets like carnivore long-term, or high fat, low fiber like keto long-term. Not great for the gut. There's a lot of research to support that because fiber feeds your good gut bugs. And if we're depriving ourselves of good quality, diverse, colorful fiber over the long term, our gut is going to be impacted. And of course, anything you're naturally sensitive or intolerant to is going to impact our gut health because our body and our gut terrain is not in a state to receive it and process it well. So here's how gut inflammation starts in the body. It's something referred to as dysbiosis, and this really is a state of chronic inflammation in the gut that can progress. So this is really imbalance or loss of equilibrium and damage to the bacterial balance in our gut, specifically our intestinal tract, where trillions and trillions of beneficial probiotic bacteria live. And this comes about over time. It's not overnight. It's gradually building over time under the surface by repeated exposures to ongoing inflammatory insults, like what I've showed you on the previous slide. We start to get overgrowth of poor bacteria. Running the show, we have therefore too little beneficial probiotic bacteria. And in some instances, as I'll allude to with gut testing in webinar 3, we can even have overgrowth of beneficial bacteria causing problems just because they're out of whack and out of balance and not more of an ideal optimal balance as they should be. So this change in bacterial balance over time from not enough of the things our gut needs and too much of the things our body doesn't need can set the stage for further inflammation. This is when symptoms can really start to surface and they start to stick around and we start to notice our life being interrupted by them and the fact that they're top of mind. And this can really progress toward what is called a leaky gut. Now, chronic gut symptoms with dysbiosis, that changing gut bacterial balance in our intestinal tract. I'm not going to go through these one by one, but at a glance, these are some of those classic gut and bowel-based symptoms that some might even attribute to being higher up in the stomach, which they could be. But these are of no surprise, I'm sure, the different kinds of things in any number and combination that we could be experiencing over time, or symptoms that seem like they came out of nowhere, but all of a sudden they're not departing as a result of a change in our bacterial balance in our intestinal tract. Okay, let's keep going. How does chronic gut inflammation progress from that state of dysbiosis? Well, it's something called leaky gut or intestinal permeability in terms of a more scientific name for the same thing. I'll show you an infographic on this in a few more slides, but what we need to know at a foundational level is that your small intestinal wall lining, where food nutrients are absorbed into your bloodstream, is only one cell thick, believe it or not. And that is a critical barrier that separates the outside of your body, which is actually your digestive tract, from the inside of your body, which is the bloodstream. Are you with me there? So there's an outside and inside of your body within your internal environment is basically what I'm saying. And this small intestinal wall lining that's one cell thick can become damaged and compromised if our gut bacteria aren't in an optimal state. There's a healthy mucus layer along that small intestinal wall, and that's where your beneficial probiotic good bacteria live. And when those start to die off and poor bacteria start to take over and run the show, that mucus lining actually becomes damaged and thinned out, maybe even non-existent in some parts along that small intestinal wall. And that's just how the inflammation can progress over time. So, if the beneficial bacteria are dying off, they're not getting what they need from our diet, our lifestyle, our environment, then that's all going to just have a bit of a ripple or cascade effect in that small intestinal wall area. And therefore, we have this reduced protective wall for our internal environment, which is our bloodstream. So a little bit more on leaky gut here. Those cells are tightly held together by proteins that are called tight junctions. And they start to, on a microscopic level, loosen and pull apart when that mucus layer starts to thin, the good bacteria starts to die off, and the poor bacteria start to take over. We wouldn't see this just by looking at it, but microscopically, there would be microscopic holes in that lining, and that opens the floodgates for undigested food particles like proteins, toxins, poor bacteria to then leak into the bloodstream and set off our immune response. And that's where that term leaky gut comes from. And so this sets the stage for chronic systemic inflammation because now these things are repeatedly leaking in through the bloodstream for as long as they continue to be part of our day-to-day. And so the last thing to really know here is that these two pieces, dysbiosis and leaky gut, are contributing factors and precursors for any autoimmune condition, as well as any other chronic gut disorder, H. pylori, candida, parasites, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, and the like. So if we've got chronic symptoms, especially things like food sensitivities, food allergies, seasonal allergies, skin issues, acne, psoriasis, eczema, there's certainly a leaky gut to some extent going on. I'm going to pause there. I see enough context that the chat should be fixed, hopefully fixed without me reloading this webinar. If someone wants to try out the chat and see if it's working, let's go for it, and we'll have our answer. All right, here's an infographic of a healthy gut lining, a small intestinal wall versus a leaky gut. At a glance, you can see the gaps, the holes between those tight cells, and what's happening on the left versus what's happening on the right in terms of those floodgates opening and things starting to leak through. All right. At a glance, summary form, my approach to gut repair and healing as a culinary and holistic nutrition practitioner is really the accumulation of all of my learning over the last 8 years and all of my practice with clients. Step one, and we'll certainly touch base on this with webinars 2 and 3 as well, from different standpoints, we need to assess and remove the gut health disruptors. We can't build a new foundation on a foundation that feels like it's on fire or that is repeatedly being insulted intentionally, unintentionally, inadvertently by gut health disruptors. So we have to assess and remove those things on a sustainable, gradual basis in order to start rebuilding your gut health and digestive foundations. So I'm working with clients to identify the underlying gut issues at play to begin with, which I'll touch more on in webinar 3, including the root causes at play that are contributing to these things. Because if we can reduce and dial down the root cause, we know we're really getting somewhere long-term and we're not going to plateau after a few weeks or a few months. Next, I'll definitely touch on this more in webinar 3, but if there are any gut infections or overgrowth of yeast or poor bacteria or parasites, those have to be actively cleared out as we rebuild this foundation. We need to identify any gut health disrupting foods and beverages that are showing up in a client's food journal that I can help to make healthy swap recommendations for. And we just need to have a gradual plan in place to gradually wean these gut health disruptors from these different standpoints out of the picture so that we know inflammation is actively coming down and we're setting the stage for actual repair and healing. Unfortunately, that step one is often the piece missed when people are trying many different things and working independently, and they just don't have that insight from someone qualified to help them identify what those gut health disruptors are for them with their unique health and medical circumstances. Step 2 is starting to rebuild gut function and your digestion period. So targeted digestive support is always in the picture with my client protocols, and different clients need different types of digestive support, short-term and long-term. Nutrient deficiencies have come about inevitably, so we need to be supporting those so your body can do what it's meant to do as it repairs and heals. And then we bring in the therapeutic gut healing foods and beverages unique for your circumstances. We'll be focusing on the 3 macros tonight, so diverse, colorful fiber from produce or any plant-based food, high quality, diverse proteins, and diverse, high quality anti-inflammatory fats and oils. Second part, or the latter half of my approach, is to start regrowing your gut flora, which is your good beneficial probiotic bacteria. And we need to be feeding both your body both prebiotic fiber and probiotic fiber, which we'll get to later on in this presentation. I only rely on targeted probiotic strains of probiotics when suitable. And believe it or not, those aren't always suitable in this first few stages of gut repair and healing. It very much depends on what the underlying gut issues are. Gut barrier closure as we move through the process, rebuilding that mucus lining through targeted natural supplementation and foods and beverages, sealing up that leaky gut wall, and things that happen throughout this process outside of the food and beverage. Very much what we're touching on in webinar 2 is supporting your mindset, your nervous system, your functional movement and therapeutic exercise for your circumstances, and soothing sleep supports so that we're repairing and healing gradually and sustainably from all angles and not just hyper-focused on food and beverage. And that's the big picture and why it takes time. So let's dig into the power of an anti-inflammatory diet in terms of a gut repair and healing standpoint. Again, our 3 macros: colorful carbohydrate fiber, anything sourced from plants; diverse lean proteins. This can be a combination of animal and plant-based proteins, depending on your needs and preferences. Our animal-based proteins have all of the building blocks and amino acids that proteins have to offer in one single source. And that is the biggest difference between plant and animal-based proteins. Scientifically, physiologically, animal-based proteins are the most bioavailable proteins for our body, meaning they're already in the most easily accessed and absorbable form of protein our body can recognize and do something with without having to work through other things to unlock the nutrients inside. Diverse anti-inflammatory fats and oils, I've listed them here. They're from both plant and animal sources, and I will dig into those further on into this presentation. Hydration and therapeutic beverages complement our solid food sources, and we'll dig into the more specifics of that as we go along here. And because you're getting this slide deck and the recording, I should have mentioned this at the start, beyond letting you know this was recorded. No need to take notes here. You're going to have this slide deck PDF to return to time and time again. All right, let's just spend a little bit of time on each of the main food groups and categories within a whole foods anti-inflammatory diet. This is always where I start with my clients before I do any tailoring further according to their health and wellness circumstances, because we do have to, number one, be aware of what a whole foods anti-inflammatory diet is, so that we can then compare what we're currently doing with a whole foods anti-inflammatory diet and see where the gaps are, see where the product and ingredient swaps need to happen, and see how your body responds. After some time with this kind of baseline introductory approach, we can then tailor it further based on how your body's responding. And that's where specialized gut health protocols with me would come into play further on into our journey. With fruits, a few things I want to touch on tonight. I'll just take the key points from each of these slides. And diversity of type and color, super important. Every different type of color of fruit has different types or different scope of fruit, vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, and plant-based compounds called phytochemicals. If we're eating the same one or two fruits all the time and we have the opportunity to digest more with ease, I encourage you to round this out and eat with the seasons as well, because more diversity means more diverse nutrients being gained, which means less opportunity for nutrient deficiencies right off the bat. What I would say with fruits is that as compared to veggies, enjoy a few servings of fruits daily, but we certainly want to have much heavier focus on the veggies. They're slower burning carbs, keeping us fuller for longer, but certainly enjoying a few servings of fruit daily is very important as part of a diverse diet. A few next level tips, if you're ready for them. Things to consider are that for best digestion, I would recommend separating fruits from solid animal proteins at your main meals. Fruits are fast burning carbs. We digest them in 30 minutes or less than an hour total. Proteins can digest over 4 to 6 hours. So if you've already got active gut symptoms, the fruit sugars can sit in the gut for hours with that protein as it digests. I would save the fruits for snacks. Paired with some plant-based protein, for example, like nut or seed butter or some raw nuts, or as part of your smoothies, because smoothies are liquefied and pre-digested and easier absorbed than the effort to digest a solid food meal. And enjoying that with a bone broth protein, collagen, or plant-based protein is fine, because those smoothies are liquefied and require less effort for digestion. When I'm tailoring fruit consumption in my gut healing protocols with clients, there's different ways we can manipulate fruits. Some of the most common ways I manipulate fruits for short-term gut protocols are to stick to lower sugar fruits, especially when we're working on a killing protocol to kill off bacterial or yeast overgrowth or parasites or H. pylori. I've listed some examples of low sugar fruits here. This is certainly going to help starve bacteria for the short term before we widen the diet back out as the protocol progresses. Veggies are slow burning carbs. They take multiple hours to digest. That's why they're part of our main meals, and they keep us fuller for longer. Like fruits, diversity of type and color, extremely important. Cooked veg over raw veg, as well as cooked fruit or steamed fruit where possible over raw fruit, unless it's in a smoothie and pureed, is going to be easier to digest when it's cooked and softened than when it's raw and hard. So that can be a really important factor for things like ulcerative colitis or diverticulitis, where the roughage and fiber and how someone's doing is really key. I've shown you here non-starchy veg versus starchy veg. In terms of tailoring veg consumption in my protocols with clients, I do manipulate starch intake based on what we're working through. If there's gut infection or overgrowth or parasites, H. pylori, we're certainly going to dial down the starchy veg for a period of time until we're further through a killing protocol where we can then increase it gradually and round it back out, because heavily sugary things, natural or refined and processed, and high starchy things, whether starchy veg or refined naked carbs, are more of a great feasting food source for that poor bacteria and yeast overgrowth. So that is how we tailor veggies with particular gut healing protocols. Whole grains are slow burning carbs as well. Our modern day grains do not resemble what they used to be pre-industrial revolution. We've got hybridized versions. We've got a lot of glyphosate going on, especially with our conventional grains. And grains and legumes are some of the most demanding categories of plant-based fiber out there, even with a healthy gut. So if your gut's compromised and you've got active symptoms, you're autoimmune and your autoimmune condition's very active, grains and legumes, in my practice, they're going to be dialed down for a period of time because your gut is working so hard to unlock the nutrients housed inside the center of these kernels that it's just not worth it in many cases. So some next step things to consider, whether you're working with a practitioner or not, is to look for naturally gluten-free options as a first step, and really just taking a look at how you're doing with the digestion of your grains, how you feel after eating them. Gluten in our hybridized modern day grains in North America, does contribute to leaky gut. There is research to show this. Whereas, grains overseas, different composure and makeup. And it's why many people do differently overseas with grains than they do here at home. But naturally gluten-free options, organically sourced for less pesticide and chemical residue on them, and soaking them overnight with some acidity, like some lemon juice or raw apple cider vinegar in the water, rinsing them really well, pressure cooking them. These are next steps we can take with any grains in our diet just to unlock the nutrients inside and make them far more digestible than if we didn't do these things with them. Like starch, like sugar, I can tailor grain consumption with someone for a defined period of time to see how their symptoms improve as we work through therapeutic protocols. Because again, they are higher starch things, even if they're whole food grains or naturally gluten-free options. And so I typically dial these down for a period of time and then round them back out when someone's ready to better and more effectively digest them. Legumes, similar to grains, and veggies, slow-burning carbs. I would recommend any legumes in the diet to be purchased organically, whether dried or canned, if possible. Pre-cooked options, when you're buying them pre-cooked, you can look for BPA-free cans, but they often have other, chemicals within that lining. I have hyperlinked here a company, Jovial Foods, that actually stores their cooked legumes in glass, which is even more ideal. Dry options, I would still recommend organically sourced if possible. Again, if you're cooking them from dry, like with grains, we want to soak them overnight with some acidity, like a tablespoon of lemon juice or raw apple cider vinegar. Rinse them well, pressure cook them in a pressure cooker or Instant Pot if those options are available to you, or whatever components of that are available and feasible for you at this time. Legumes are certainly something I tailor based on how much they're part of someone's diet to begin with, how they're doing and feeling after consuming them. Sometimes they tolerate some varieties better than others. And I certainly manipulate that intake through the process of a few gut protocols with someone as I see how their body responds, how their bowel movements are doing, how the bloating and distension and constipation or diarrhea might be changing as we go on. Because like the starchy veggies and the grains, legumes are high starch. They have a bit of protein, but they are very high fiber and high starch as well. So it's really that umbrella of starchy things, whole foods or not, that are feeding poor bacteria if we have some major or increasingly severe underlying gut issues going on, like bacterial overgrowth, yeast overgrowth, H. pylori, parasites, that sort of thing. All right, next category. Doing well for time here too. Raw nuts and seeds. These are slow burning carbs as a source of fiber as well. What I love about nuts and seeds is that they contain a lot of fiber. They're a great source of anti-inflammatory fat. That's why they're so satiating. Some may be inclined to think that nuts or things like peanut butter or nut or seed butters are high protein. They do contain some protein, but I wouldn't say they're known for their protein. They're not a go-to protein source. There's just a little bit of a reward that there is a little bit of protein in there. Rely on these things for fat, a good source of fat, and some fiber as well. With sourcing with these things, I would highly recommend you purchase them raw. So, not jazzed up by the store, the manufacturer, the producer of the product at all. You can do that at home yourself. and you can, use better quality ingredients. I would certainly recommend organic with these kinds of things if possible, especially with things, I would say especially with any peanuts. Those aren't typically part of my protocols because they're a top allergen, but cashews, pistachios, and peanuts, some of the highest mold nuts in terms of naturally occurring mold on the surfaces based on how they're grown. Almonds and walnuts, kind of things to consider too. But again, what works with your budget and what's feasible for you. I'd recommend storing these things in an airtight glass container in the refrigerator to preserve their freshness. They can go rancid more quickly when they're in a pantry or a cupboard or drawer. And we can increase their digestibility if you really want to take things next level. They would need to be soaked overnight, for example, about 8 hours or so, and dehydrated. That's how we're going to activate the nutrients locked inside most effectively. But that's up to whether someone has the time in the dehydrator to do so. Otherwise, when raw roughage for some digestive conditions is too much, like ulcerative colitis or diverticulitis, sometimes the smooth, not crunchy versions of nut or seed butters can be therapeutic foods without being so bothersome because they don't have quite the roughage in the same form. I do tailor nut and seed consumption in my gut repair and healing protocols, as I've noted with, active gut issues where there's ulcerations or insults to the lining of the large intestinal tract, higher mold nuts if we're supporting poor bacterial overgrowth or candida yeast overgrowth or fungal issues in the body, our higher mold nuts are not going to be our best options for nut and seed choices. The last few things I'll say about fiber is just looking at fiber from the bigger picture. You've now seen our different categories of whole food fiber, anything that comes from a plant. There's different ways we can categorize this fiber in terms of looking at the big picture that best supports our bowel movements, our poops, our overall digestion and gut health. And that's firstly looking at this as soluble fiber versus insoluble. If we're enjoying a wide, diverse diet of colorful sources of fiber to the greatest extent we can with the symptoms or conditions we're experiencing right now, we're naturally going to get some soluble and insoluble fiber from the sources of produce that we're ingesting and enjoying. Soluble fiber, think oatmeal, chia seed pudding. This fiber, like the inner flesh of fruits and veggies, it becomes thick and gloopy when it comes into contact with water or bodily fluids. It's going to move really slowly through the gut, keep you fuller for longer. It's going to help soften up hard, painful, hard to pass constipated bowel movements. So, I've listed some examples here, but that soluble fiber really plays those key roles through your gut as it moves through. The insoluble fiber, think the outer skins of fruits and veggies, parts of nuts and seeds, is not meant to be broken down at all, believe it or not. It actually remains undigested throughout the entire duration of moving through your gut. It really helps cleanse the colon and all parts of the gut like a broom, clearing it of debris, bulking up your stool so you have a formed stool. And there's several examples here of insoluble fiber. So the takeaway is the greater diversity, the better. I'm going to tailor whether someone's consuming those outer skins of fruits and veggies based on whether they have things like diverticulitis or colitis going on, where that raw roughage, even if it's cooked and softened, is still too much high fiber for the gut until it's in a better state to receive that kind of fiber. Let's talk a little bit about prebiotic fiber and probiotics. So many people have heard about probiotics in terms of capsules or raw ferments, like you see here listed, but prebiotics, I'd say, are even more important because prebiotic fiber, like from the food sources I've listed here, are the food sources for your good gut bacteria. So if you've got the raw ferments coming in or the probiotic capsules coming in, but we don't have enough food source for that good bacteria, it's not going to stick around and be as effective as we might think. So whether it's cooked or raw, whatever is best tolerated at this time, what is seasonal, that sort of thing. Prebiotics as part of our meals, snacks, smoothies, whatever it might be throughout the week is extremely important. So with these slides, I encourage you to take a look at the food lists and ask yourself, do I have, a handful of foods from each of these categories currently in my day-to-day diet? What's my next step? What can I put on my grocery list the next time I shop? What is seasonal? What is local? These kinds of things, those kinds of questions of ourselves can really help direct what we put in our grocery cart moving forward as we move through different seasons of the year. Liver-loving foods is the last part of the fiber section I'll speak to here. Your liver has over 500 functions every single day. It's impossible to believe, but it's true. I've listed some liver-loving foods and beverages here. In a nutshell, liver-loving foods are anything green, food or beverage, nourishing beverages like organic green tea and matcha, or a good greens powder. Anything bitter like radicchio, radish, arugula. And then we have these other things like avocado and turmeric and walnuts that aren't necessarily always bitter or green, but they're wonderful for the liver. Citrus, these things really help the liver to filter, just like the filter of your car, it needs support for its 500 plus functions. Your liver really binds things up after your body's done using them, like your hormone metabolites. Through 3 different phases of liver detox, your liver basically takes what your body no longer needs, bundles it up like a present, wraps it up tight, and sends it through your bowels and in particular to rid the body of that waste, toxins, hormone metabolites like excess estrogen, and just to eliminate what your body no longer needs. And if we don't have great liver function and filtration and detoxification, and we don't have great bowel movements, or we're constipated, or they're too loose and runny, those toxins can be held in the body and recirculated back in when they're not being eliminated well and regularly. And that alone can contribute to wreaking havoc on your system, because the liver filtration and detox and elimination through our bowels and poops just isn't as effective as it could be. So my challenge to you tonight is to aim for one of these foods to be present at each of your main meals gradually over time, something green, something bitter, or something else in this list. And I'm sure there are more foods than this, but this is a good start. And an extra challenge, if you're up for it, you can enjoy your liver-loving ingredient first at mealtime to start supporting the overall digestion of your meal. All right, that's fiber. Fiber is the biggest of the macros. Fiber feeds your gut, the prebiotics, the probiotics, and everything else. So that's crucial as part of our day-to-day diet. And of course, when you're experiencing active symptoms or inflammation, the fiber is really what I need to tailor with clients the most. The protein and fats and oils, much easier to navigate. There's less options to choose with to begin with, and they're digested much differently, but the fiber is where we're going to spend a lot of time together, because that's what's going to look different, at the beginning to the middle to the end of our time together, and what things look like in a day-to-day maintenance protocol after we complete our work together. Protein, super important. This is growth and repair of cells in the body. This is the turnover of new cells and support of your organs when there is inflammation or disorder or disease in the body, or just maintenance of a healthy state of health. Diversity and sourcing are really important here too, so we're not sticking to the same 1 or 2 things. And sometimes diets do look really narrow for a period of time when we have very active inflammation. I think of my diet when I was 22 and diagnosed with ulcerative colitis and very ill and very symptomatic, versus now when, I don't feel like I have an autoimmune condition at all. So, my diet was very narrow at that time, and it gradually diversified and grew over time as I took that action and did the repair and healing work, which is a journey in itself. So if things look narrow right now, it might be because they have to, but I encourage you, if the means exist, to work with a practitioner who can help you expand that back out to a more diverse diet sooner than later over time. It is incredibly possible, and I'm proof of that. Animal proteins are listed here. Plant-based proteins are listed here. With our plant-based proteins, organic, non-GMO soy going to be our best, most high protein option from a plant-based source. Plant-based protein powders from a good source, especially fermented organic ones, are pre-digested by the good bacteria they contain. Those are great sources of plant-based proteins if they're well tolerated. Organic quinoa are legumes. They do have protein. They are more starch and fiber than protein. So while they gain us some protein, if we're looking to get 25 or 30 grams of protein at a meal, it would take a whole load of quinoa and legumes, more than you could ever eat in one sitting, to gain the amount of protein you need. So that's where, those things have some protein to offer, but it is trickier to get a high protein meal. out of that when it's more starch than protein. Hemp, chia, flax, kind of like our nuts and seeds, tiny amounts of protein in a 1 tablespoon serving. So we get the fiber and the fats from hemp, chia, and flax and little bits of protein, but they're not a highly reliable source of protein with the small amount you would use in a smoothie or a hot cereal bowl or something, or as garnish on a salad. So these are just things to keep in mind, especially if you're looking to hit some protein goals in terms of the grams you're ingesting daily to support repair and healing. Anti-inflammatory culinary fats and oils, as we wind down a whole foods anti-inflammatory diet here. These are minimally refined and processed or unrefined and unprocessed. Some takeaways for tonight with culinary fats and oils, organic if possible with your budget. Toxins love to hang out in fats. So we can reduce, the toxin exposure, just in and of itself that way. We're looking for oils and fats in dark glass bottles where packaged. Ghee and coconut oil are really the exceptions to that. Nut and seed butters, again, clear glass, but that's just how they're sold, and that's fine. In terms of dark glass bottles, we're looking for something that says first pressed, expeller pressed, or cold pressed. That means minimally refined and processed. The canola oils, peanuts, safflower, sunflower oils in big glass jugs and containers that are typically plastic are really what we want to steer away from. And this is usually where I steer clients first in terms of easy swaps that aren't too much of a price difference depending on what you're looking for. You use a little bit at a time, and a little bit goes a long way, and it's probably one of the best ingredient investment swaps we can make if we want to drastically start reducing inflammation from highly refined and processed fat and oil exposure. When cooking at home, I've listed our sources of anti-inflammatory culinary fats and oils here for you. Quite a variety to choose from. I encourage you to have a few different types on hand at any time just to rotate through them because different types of fats and oils handle different temperatures of heat while cooking, and that is really important. And some don't get heated at all, like hemp and chia and flax and walnut oils. They're best used for salads or in smoothies because they are not designed to be heated, period. All right, miscellaneous pantry and fridge staples. These are some of my favorite recommendations. Certainly not all of them, can't fit them all on one slide. In terms of more gut-friendly, naturally gluten-free and otherwise, free of gut-triggering ingredients that can be relied on in small amounts now and then as needed. Everything from gluten-free and grain-free baking flours. Grain-free baking flours are just a great next step from gluten-free. I like to rely on the grain-free when we're working through, bacterial overgrowth, yeast overgrowth, parasites, H. pylori, autoimmune conditions, celiac, Crohn's, colitis, or otherwise, just in taking that next level flour. That's just a bit more therapeutic. Dark chocolate, raw cacao, modest amounts of natural sweeteners that have vitamins or minerals, other, naturally occurring compounds to offer. Condiments, this is probably, besides fats and oils, the biggest way that you can start actively and drastically reducing inflammatory exposures from poor quality ingredients that are engineered and not real food. So I've listed some examples here, salad dressings made at home with a bit of oil, vinegar, fresh herbs, a touch of raw honey, very different ingredient composition than something packaged from Kraft, for example, for lack of a better brand to mention. When we look at those ingredient lists, they're a mile long. Often sugar is one of the first ingredients, and that's refined sugar at best. We've got artificial things, flavors, colors in there. It's complex, and your gut is then processing that. So way more cost effective to have these pantry staples in the pantry that you can grab for different purposes, whether baking, salad dressings, or otherwise. And there's a lot, fresh and dried herbs and spices, I think, are often underused in kitchens. And so, turmeric, ginger, cinnamon, and clove, 4 wonderful, powerful, antioxidant-rich, anti-inflammatory spices. Fresh and dried herbs go a long way too in flavoring a meal, in favor of less refined sodium and refined sugars and other who knows what in some of our conventional packaged products. Last thing here with the whole foods anti-inflammatory diet is our therapeutic beverages. I love that Community Natural Foods is one of my favorite places to shop, and my co-host this evening, has everything in one place. I think the first time I discovered Community Foods back in 2015, when I moved to Calgary, I was just shocked and so like pleasantly surprised and overwhelmed, and loved the fact that I could get everything in one place. And so, everything I've mentioned tonight can be purchased there and enjoyed there, whether it's purchased online or in store. So, to have everything in one place and one-stop shopping just saves a whole lot of time, energy, and effort when you're tired after a long day of work and don't want to spend a lot of time grocery shopping. They also carried the filtered water system that I love, the Santevia Water Systems Mina pitcher, pictured here. It gently remineralizes your tap water. It gently alkalizes your water, taking it more from an acidic tap water state to ever so slightly alkaline. Organic herbal teas, the store carries a variety of these. I suggest organic because teas are very concentrated down. And so with very concentrated things that become liquid form, it's great to reduce the toxic load that way. Our community also carries a few different types of electrolytes that I love, whether it's coconut water or Organica's electrolyte powder to add to water. Organic bone broth, there's wonderful local businesses and Community Foods that offer different organic bone broths. Again, organic is great, grass-fed, grass-finished, pasture-raised, because this is liquefied. Toxins are more concentrated in liquefied foods because what I meant to say is our body's more rapidly absorbing them as liquids than chewing them down as solid food. So that's important with that kind of sourcing. And I love that Community Foods also has a variety of medicinal mushrooms, especially in powdered form, where a teeny tiny bit of powder goes a long way. These are wonderful for the nervous system, cognition, focus throughout the day, and they can also blend with other beautiful ingredients to create, coffee alternatives that are naturally caffeine-free and really calming and energizing depending on the medicinal mushroom you've chosen. To summarize here, as we move out of this phase and start to wind down this webinar towards our Q&A, our gut health disruptors are really summarized here. I've really hit on a lot of these in moving through the slides already. They shouldn't be of any surprise here, or maybe they are. But, if we're starting to navigate some food eliminations of sorts and starting to take a look at our overall diet, whether we're journaling and tracking that for a week to see where we're at or not, this is where we best start. Reducing our inflammatory exposures through food and beverage by tapping into more of the diverse foods I've just shared with you, reducing the frequency and the volume with which we're consuming these foods in the first place and over time, and looking for those swaps that are not gut health disruptors in the first place, that with repeated exposure to, we're nourished by and fueled by instead of disrupted by. And this alone, let alone addressing any underlying gut issues that need deeper support, can drastically reduce active inflammation and therefore active chronic symptoms to some extent. And I say to some extent because food and beverage is a huge piece of gut repair and healing, but as you'll see in webinars 2 and 3, it's a chunk of the puzzle. It's not the whole puzzle. So there are other things we need to be addressing with food and beverage complementing that other work. Lastly, specialized gut health approaches are out there. As a practitioner, I don't follow any of these to a perfect T as they read when you would Google them online. What I do is I consider the intent and the focus of each of them, and I pull different elements from different protocols when creating custom protocols for clients, because no one is going to fit in a box, literally, like in this chart, of one of these protocols for X amount of time. Your physiology is similar to the next person, but your unique health and medical and life journey is not anything like anyone else, not even your family members. So, I have a laser focus on one person at a time in terms of, okay, what does this person need? What kind of elements of these protocols would best be pulled for their protocols? How is their body responding to these recommendations? And where do we go next? Knowing the big picture of what we're trying to kill off, the leaky gut we're working to seal over time, and so forth. So while these are approaches that are out there, I highly encourage you, especially if you're working independently by yourself, to not get stuck or pigeonhole yourself into one of these protocols as the be-all end-all. And I say that in having hundreds of conversations with women and seeing that time and time again, whether it intentionally happened or it inadvertently happened, the confusion and frustration can skyrocket and become sky high over time. If someone feels like they're hitting a wall over and over again, or improving and then plateauing and not continuing to improve from there. All right, really excited to share the next few slides with you. Community Natural Foods has been such a wonderful local partner to me over my years in practice and in living in Calgary over the past 8 to 9 years as well. And I'm thrilled to be on this gut health webinar series with you, with their unwavering support as my co-host of sorts. And together they've created, they've created a wonderful event page for this gut health series, which you've seen already, I'm sure. There are already some hyperlinked resources up there ahead of this first webinar. You'll start to see more trickle in probably tomorrow, now that this webinar is almost complete. And then after webinars 2 and 3, you'll also see resources posted the day after each of those. So here's what you're going to see for webinar 1 as soon as tomorrow, likely before the weekend, is you're going to see the slide deck loaded up as a multi-slide PDF so that you can come back to these slides as many times as you choose to. These slides cannot be reproduced or shared in any way, modified in any way as property of my private practice. So please be aware of this. They're simply for your reference. You're going to see a 2-page PDF handout, the bottom left-hand corner here, key gut health nutrients. What I've done is compiled some key gut health vitamins and minerals and antioxidants that are wonderful for gut and digestive support through food and beverage. And I've listed examples of foods that are reliable sources of each of those nutrients. So it's a great way to assess how many of these foods you're currently consuming, what you're able to digest and tolerate, and what your next steps are for incorporating more diversity into your diet. In the middle here, my product recommendations. I took an enjoyable walk through the store a number of weeks ago and compiled gut-friendly recommendations that I love. This is not a be-all end-all list or everything I love that is gut health supportive and friendly, but there are a lot of my favorites that I enjoy personally and recommend to clients as supports that are available in the store and through online purchases with community. So that is already there for you. It was uploaded prior to this webinar. And you'll also see something else that was uploaded prior to tonight, a mini recipe bundle. Gives you a taste, literally, of the more robust and more involved recipe bundles that my clients enjoy that are custom to their protocols as they move through their protocols with me. I encourage you to tag me on Instagram or Facebook along with community when you make any of those recipes with a picture or a video of you enjoying them. That I love to see. And super excited to share this with you along with Community Natural Foods with the shopping list you see there that I just showed you in the center of the previous slide. Using the code GUTSAVE15, you can save $15 on an online order from the store of $150 or more. This promo is available from 6 p.m. to midnight on the 3 dates of this webinar, starting with tonight. So screenshot this right now or write it down, put it into a note in your phone because that is for specific dates and periods of time in conjunction with this webinar. Here's where I hang out on social media and online. I encourage you to come say hi, send me an email about your thoughts about this webinar, tag me on Instagram with anything you're implementing as a result of new ideas from this webinar and so forth. And lastly, if, just from this first webinar alone, not even having attended webinars 2 and 3, if you're ready to have a conversation with me just about what you're navigating because you've, had it on your mind or know that you'd like to work with a practitioner in the near or distant future and feel like I could be a good fit for you based on what I've shared with you tonight and the sampling of resources that allow you to get to know me as a culinary and holistic nutrition practitioner, I encourage you to visit jessicapecush.com and click on that green button, apply for a digestion breakthrough call. It's a Google form that really just gives me a sense of the context of what you're experiencing right now. And those complimentary 15 to 30-minute calls allow us to have a Zoom or phone call conversation about what you're experiencing and allow me to address, how I would specifically support you if you were one of my clients so you can learn if it would be a good fit for you. However, if you're here to learn and you're not ready for a conversation, perfectly fine. Webinars 2 and 3 will really round out the picture for you and give you a sense of the bigger picture so you can self-assess whether a practitioner is in your near or distant future or not. And I'll leave that there. There's hyperlinks within the slide deck so that you can click on the PDF of slides tomorrow and access the research studies and the clickable links that are here throughout the presentation. I'm going to close my chat and take a look at any hands that are up with questions over the next handful of minutes or so. I can't believe how many of you are here. This is unbelievable. Thank you for being here, and thank you for continuing to stay until the end. Let me just open up the chat here, and we'll get that chat sorted out for webinar number 2. Let's see what I can see here, and I'll try to get to a few questions. Okay, I hope I can see questions. We'll see. I cannot, unfortunately. So what we're going to do here is if you have a burning question, and I apologize for that, but we'll sort it out for webinar 2. So I don't think the chat is working. If you have a burning question that is top of mind right now that you'd like an answer to, I'm more than happy and in a position to respond to questions through my email, which is linked on this slide. I'll just go back one slide. That is easily answered through email. I'm not in a position, if you're not a client of mine, to answer highly personal questions about what is right for you. But if you have a question that further clarifies something I've shared with you tonight, so you can move forward with your ideas and plan for yourself, I encourage you to send me an email here at connect@jessicapecush.com, and I will respond to it at my earliest convenience so that you get the answers and clarity you need in the capacity I can provide if you're not a current client of mine, which you may not be. So feel free to shoot me an email through connect@jessicapecush.com. You're also welcome to send comments about this webinar, what you thought about it, how it benefited from you, what your 1, 2, or 3 next takeaways are. I would love nothing more than to receive an email or a Facebook message through Messenger or a DM in my Instagram if you attended tonight and are looking forward to webinars 2 and 3, along with any comments you'd love to share. Feel free to give me a follow on Facebook and Instagram if you'd like to be an ongoing part of my online community where I share resources, insights into my practice and the wins my clients are experiencing. And before I wrap up here tonight, thank you once again for being here. I can't wait for next Thursday when we dive into calming and energizing lifestyle practices for gut repair and healing. And thank you to Community Natural Foods for being such a wonderful health food store in our community of Calgary through multiple locations, for inviting me to be a host of this gut health series in conjunction and partnership with them. And I can't wait to see you next week. Bye for now. Have a great rest of the night, everybody.